Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Suzanne Duncan, and I'm the Vice President of Philanthropy at the Canadian Women's Foundation. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to recognize that the work of the Foundation and that of the programs we support take place on traditional First Nations, Métis, and Inuit territories. We are so grateful for the opportunity to meet and work on this land. However, we recognize that land acknowledgements are not enough. We need to pursue truth, reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship in an ongoing effort to make right with all our relations. Today, I'm joining you from Toronto, where I'm hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory, and I want to just pause for a moment to recognize the spirit behind that name. One dish, one spoon is a law and a custom that was used by Indigenous people for at least 1,000 years. And that custom describes the agreement for sharing a hunting territory between many nations. We all eat out of the same dish. All of us share this territory with only one spoon. That means we all share the responsibility of ensuring that the dish is never empty. And that includes taking care of the land, the creatures that we share that with. Importantly, there are no knives at this table, which represents the peace that we all must keep. And I'm going to hold that responsibility in my heart and in my mind as we begin the conversation. So thank you all for choosing to honor International Women's Day by joining us as we explore what it takes to build equitable workplaces. Equity and inclusion are more urgent than ever as Canada faces economic disruptions and crises on so many fronts. The silver lining of these challenges is that now there are so many opportunities to refine and rethink the way that we support our employees and build workplaces that lead to higher engagement, higher retention, and higher productivity. Over the next hour, we're going to hear from Minister François-Philippe Champagne on the economic value of inclusivity. We're going to speak with Ratna Stevens, the CEO of Nature's Path, about her own path to leadership. This will be followed by a panel discussion with AJ Fernandez Rivera, who's a managing director at Accenture, and Regine Roberge, who is the vice president of Optimum Mortgage at Canadian Western Bank. They're going to talk about what each of us can do to move equity forward today and every day. First, though, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce to you Paulette Senior, the president and CEO of the Canadian Women's Foundation, and someone I look forward to seeing every day. Paulette has devoted her career to empowering women and girls to overcome barriers and reach their full potential. Paulette joined the foundation in 2016 after 10 years as a CEO of YWCA Canada. Her work with the foundation is guided by a vision of inclusive national movements towards gender equity, movements that will strengthen all people in Canada. Over to you, Paulette.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. You know, it's not every time that I speak that music is in the background, so it's feeling pretty special today to have that feature. So thank you to all the people doing this work in the back to make that happen. And hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We are truly honored to have so many of you with us, especially on this, one of my favorite days of the year, International Women's Day. And I want to commend you for choosing to explore your role in advancing gender equity in your workplaces, your organizations, and businesses. It's change makers like you who will lead the way to boosting the diversity, empowerment, and dignity each and every one of us needs to thrive. And you can help lead the way to a stronger, more equal economic future for Canada. That particular vision hinges on intentional choices that we all make as managers, as employees, human resource professionals, policymakers, and leaders. Corporate Canada has immense power to help build a Canada that is more inclusive, equal, and ultimately more human. This discussion could not come at a more urgent time. The job losses, career interruptions, and economic instability so intensely felt by women and gender diverse people, especially Indigenous and racialized women, Black women, newcomer women, single moms, and women with disabilities, will have lasting reverberations. I also think of our next generation. What will their lives and work be like? Now more than ever, corporate Canada needs to double down on its efforts to hire, retain, and promote women, gender diverse people, and all equity-seeking workers. I do see signs of hard-won progress. Now, more than 1 in every 4 board directors in public companies are women. We are halfway to board gender parity, but listen, we've got a lot of work to do there. Data on board and leadership representation also shows huge gaps for Indigenous women, racialized women, and women with disabilities. At the Canadian Women's Foundation, we're cognizant of the reality that there are more gains to be had. In fact, in Canada, there are more CEOs named Michael and Mark than female CEOs, all put together, according to Equileap's report on gender progress. So some people think that progress is inevitable. If we hang back and wait a little longer, equity and diversity will materialize. Or if we just hire a bit more people, diverse people, our job is done. But there's a clear line between weak representation at decision-making tables and glacial progress on equality. We don't need tweaks. We need systemic change. Without a new mindset, new plans and priorities and investments, a new vision for transformational leadership, we will too easily replicate inequities. We need to all play a part to eliminate the barriers, gender pay gaps, childcare and elder care, sometimes all at the same time, unlivable wages, and high risk of harassment and violence in the workplace and beyond. The Canadian Women's Foundation's economic development programs designed to empower those living on low incomes with employment and entrepreneurial support, job skills, and opened doors in the fields that women don't get many opportunities in, is one piece of the puzzle for change. Our generous donors and corporate partners are fueling these programs in every region of the country, and we are truly grateful. What more can corporations and businesses do? We're going to explore that today. But there are a few key principles I ask that you keep in mind. Promote inclusive leadership and include women and equity-seeking people in your decision-making. Avoid one-size-fits-all strategies and embrace a workplace culture with flexibility to accommodate diverse needs. And lastly, but not least, resource, evaluate, and measure inclusion progress, and be transparent about it. Report it so that folks know what's happening. You may have heard about the spike in gender-based violence in Canada, including sexual violence and intimate partner abuse. Since abuse survivors tend to turn to trusted friends and co-workers for help, we all need the competence to respond well. But in Canada, only 1 in 5 of us are very confident we know how to support women who has experienced abuse. Our signal for help is an incredible educational tool. It's simple, yet incredible, and learning campaign that shifts cultures of stigma and silence about abuse and culture and cultures of support. So moving from the stigma and silence to cultures of support. Workplaces have legislative and best practices responsibilities to safeguard their employees and from gender-based abuse. You can, in fact, be proactive. So I encourage you to go to the Signal for Help or signalresponder.ca for more information, and we'll send you more details of how we can partner on this effort after this event. So, as we look to a future of great uncertainty and promise alike, I leave you with the words of Rosemary Brown, one of our founding mothers of the Canadian Women's Foundation, and the first Black woman elected to a provincial legislature in Canada. She said, "Until all of us have made it, none of us have made it." Her words remind us that personal well-being and thriving is not just about pursuing our own success. We'll get nowhere if that's our mentality this International Women's Day. We have to poise ourselves to break barriers for all. Sometimes that means breaking with old trends and transforming the way we do life and work. And it always means lifting underheard voices. So lifting the voices that need to be lifted in this conversation. So I challenge all of us to embrace that spirit together. And although the last few years have been worsened, or have seen worsened inequalities, our shared experience has shown us how interdependent, connected, and human we all are. We would be wise to hold on tightly to that sense of humanity and channel it into our work so that we can all indeed make it. Thanks, Suzanne. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Paulette. And thank you for reminding us that without efforts, we're not going to be able to reach our gender equity goals. You're so right to say that we can't just pursue our own personal success. We have to break barriers for all. So thank you for that really important advice. I want to take a moment right now to say thank you to our wonderful event sponsors, Bosch Rexroth, Palette Valo LLP, and Altus Group. All three of these supporters have been supporting this event since its launch in 2020. We really appreciate your generosity and also the understanding you have of the importance of having conversations like this one today. Before we move on to the rest of our discussion, Minister Champagne has prepared a short video message that we'd like to share.
Hi everyone, it's Francois-Philippe Champagne, the Canadian Minister of Science, Innovation and Industry. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you for inviting me at least virtually to your event on International Women's Day. As you know, we all need to do our part to promote women in key leadership roles. That's what we've done, among others, with our 50-30 challenge, making sure that there be more women at the table in key leadership positions. Alors, comme vous savez, aujourd'hui, c'est une journée spéciale, on célèbre les femmes. On a tous, je pense, un rôle à jouer pour faire la promotion des femmes au sein des positions de leadership. Nous, on l'a fait avec le défi 50-30. Et je pense qu'on constate tous aujourd'hui que ça prend plus de diversité, plus d'inclusion. Alors, j'en profite pour vous souhaiter une joyeuse Journée internationale des femmes. Happy International Women's Day. I wish you a very good day.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ratna Stevens, the CEO of Nature's Path Foods, who will be talking with Paulette about how to lead with equity. Ratna co-founded Nature's Path Foods in 1985, and it's grown to become North America's largest independent certified organic breakfast and snack food company. As a role model for women in business, Ratna was named one of Canada's 100 most powerful women by the Women's Executive Network. She's also been awarded the YWCA Women of Distinction Award for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and she was honored with an Influential Women in Business Award by Business in Vancouver. And in 2021, Ratna and her husband, Aaron, were named co-recipients of the Order of British Columbia. My goodness, so many great accolades. Welcome, Ratna, and welcome, Paulette.
Thank you again, Suzanne, and I want to add my welcome to you, Ratna. It's an incredible opportunity to be in this conversation with you today, and I've been looking forward to it. We met, we had an initial conversation, and you actually kind of moved me and inspired me quite a bit, and so I can't wait for this conversation to happen today. And so I want to begin our conversation by talking about your leadership today, and to just get a sense of give folks a sense of who you are, but also the leadership style that you have used in your company to inspire others. So let's have that part of the conversation first.
First of all, congratulations to all of you for International Women's Day. Celebrating the women who have excelled in their field, whether it was financial, art, political, social. As it said, that we stand on the shoulders of others who have come before us. We are very grateful to them. I was born in pre-partition India. In 1947, I was an infant. India was divided in two countries, India and Pakistan. Overnight, my parents became refugees and they left Pakistan and settled in India. I was brought up by my grandmother. I'm sure you've heard that a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
She was strong. She told me how to believe in yourself. And I'm very grateful for her mentorship. There was not much money, but there was plenty of love. And love is nourishing. By scholarship, bursaries, and working, which was unheard of at that time. Young women working? No. I finished my degree in English literature. I wanted to become PhD student. Financially, I couldn't do so. So I became a lecturer in girls' college. In 1969, I met and married a wonderful man, Aaron. And we came to British Columbia, Vancouver, and started our lives together. There are many other businesses we work together. Sometimes worked in unison, other times we had our own areas. But in 1985, we started a company together, which is Nature's Path. I gave him some money. I was working at the restaurant, which was our restaurant, and saving some money. I said to him, Aaron, you take this money and do whatever you want to do. One condition, you are not going to ask me to help you out. It went on for 5 years, almost 5 years. No, let's say about 4 years, because we registered in 1985. In early 1992, he came to me. He said, Ratna, please help me out. I need your help. So I joined Nature's Path, and the rest is history.
And it would seem so, Ratna, because you've certainly, over the years, ran a very successful business. And so I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is the role of your grandmother and maybe other powerful female role models that you've had in your life. Could you talk about how they affected your leadership style and for you to be the leader and the success that you are today?
As you know, no person is an island. We are the result of many efforts, many hands, many minds. Prominently in my life, my grandmother had a great influence. She became a widow at the age of 17, 18.
Wow.
She never married again. Her third child was born 5 months after the death of her husband, of his father. She was very strong. When she left her village, her relatives took her land her house, but she didn't care. She started sewing, and she brought up her kids, 3 boys. She always told me, believe in yourself. You are going to be fine. You are my daughter. You are a lioness. And I still remember, she has passed away about 28 years ago. I still remember.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a great influence in my life. My teacher, my principal, I do not know what they saw in me. They must have seen some spark that needs to be ignited. They told me, no, you cannot sit in the back of the class. You need to sit in the front of the class. Or you need any money to help you out. And being so self-proud, I said, no. But they were instrumental in my upbringing. I read many stories. Right now, I'm trying to read the second book of Michelle Obama. I'm having a little bit hard time. The first one, I was so engrossed in it, I had to finish it in 2 days. I read about Maya Angelou. What a beautiful woman.
Mm-hmm.
A
One of
poet.
my favorite, actually.
A poet, a writer, memorist, an activist. You know what she said about people? She said, I have learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That stuck in my mind. People will never forget how you made them feel. And that's where my grandmother, Maya, they all come in how to treat people with care and empathy.
So I'm curious about how these powerful women certainly influenced you. It's clear, and thank you for raising the name of these powerful women, including your grandmother, because the role that they played in your success is evident, and you seem to be carrying that spirit with you today. So, you know, I know that as someone myself who leads an organization, that it's really important that we are constantly aware that role modeling is one of the things that we do even when we don't think about it, even when it's not intentional, because others are watching. And you know, you have been a walking success in partnering with your husband all these years. And so I'm curious about the kind of role modeling and inspiration that guides your leadership. You talked about the importance of caring and sympathy and empathy with others. Those are important qualities. But we know that the leadership that you provide matters significantly. So what's the most powerful thing that you've learned in terms of leaders in workplaces that you think can support to have work environments that are more harmonious, more equitable, more supportive of people from different backgrounds? Could you talk a little bit about that?
I told you the background that I came from, and that has been instilled in me. I'm a mother of 3 daughters, a sister of five daughters of my mother. It is written in Sanskrit. Yatra naryasta pujyate ramate tatra devta. Wherever women are worshipped, God resides there. In our company, they call me Mama Ratna. Yes, I'm a mother. I'm getting older, so I am mother and grandmother too.
Aren't we all?
I want to have a parity, wage parity, color, race. Fortunately, in our company, 60%, especially in our head office, 60% are female and 40% are male.
That's a huge accomplishment, Ratna.
I'm very grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, pandemic has created problem in our leadership team. We lost a couple of women, but we are trying to get back. We are holding on as far as the board is concerned. We have 2 men. We are looking for 2 women, 1 woman and 1 gender neutral. But we are having hard time. But we will overcome. We are looking for many, not many, you are looking for very capable young or old or middle-aged women to help us and help the second generation. Because I'm not going to be there forever, maybe a few months. Then it's time for me to give that responsibility, pass on to the caring and loving hand of second generation and management. So we are looking in, even we looked and looked for VP of operation, had hard time. Our daughter, Jyoti, she's very conscientious. She's VP for strategy. She used to be VP of HR, and now she's a VP of strategy and culture. It's hard these days. Very, very hard. It used to be not that hard. You had so many candidates, but we are holding on, even in finance. Somehow in Western Canada, we don't have many candidates. I do not know why. Maybe we are too fussy. Maybe the women have decided, I'm going to give my time to my family and my children. So we are facing that very much.
You know, we are living in a time where lots of folks, particularly women, have had to make critical decisions around what their priorities are and what they will take on. But I suspect that you kind of making that known in this particular event today, you may actually get some new folks coming to the table in terms of wanting to be involved with Nature's Path and to put their names forward. So that's also a possibility. But I do admire the commitment that you are demonstrating by really insisting on holding spots to make sure that you continue to have gender parity, particularly on the board and in senior roles. And that's really part of the message that we're bringing forward today in terms of International Women's Day, is that the gaps that exist in terms of women in leadership roles, but also in terms of pay gaps and other gaps, that this is really what we are working to achieve. And it's great to know that leaders like you are holding the ground in terms of insisting on that happens. And it sounds as if your daughter is that kind of woman to also do the same. So it's amazing. I'm just wondering if there are any sort of last words that you'd want to leave folks with before we call our conversation to a conclusion. some messages of inspiration on this important day that you'd want to leave us with.
As mothers, wives, grandmothers, sisters, daughters, friends, professionals, we all have the ability to make choices that shape what we do in our life, and also that shapes our life. We must. Life is too short. There's a poem that comes to my mind I often quote. I will paraphrase it because I didn't think I was going to quote this. I shall not pass this way again. Any goodness I can do, any kindness I can show, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. Life is short, life is beautiful. If you can make a difference in few people's life, do so. It behooves us as human being of the same race as humanity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ratna. Thank you for the words of inspiration. And thank you, because what I really see foremost in meeting you and having conversations with you is that you truly do lead with your heart. And it matters when you do, and we could use a lot more of that in leadership today. So thank you for the conversation with me. And I wish you all the best as you think about how you're going to transition from your leadership role. That's an exciting time as well. So thank you. And I'm going to pass it back to Suzanne.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ratna, and thank you, Paulette. That was a really inspiring conversation, and it was so interesting to hear about Ratna's path to leadership and all of the influences in her life. It's now my pleasure to move on to our panel conversation, and I'm going to introduce to you two great speakers. We have AJ Fernandez Rivera with us, who is the Managing Director at Accenture and who leads technology sales for Canada. As an out and proud transgender woman, AJ is a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion. In 2022, she was recognized by the Globe and Mail as one of Canada's 50 best executives. Wow. And as a key member of the leadership team, she is the executive sponsor of Accenture Canada's Pride Employee Resource Group, the co-executive sponsor of Women in Technology, and Accenture Canada's Technology Inclusion and Diversity Lead. What a great person to have with us today. We also have with us Regine Roberge. Regine is the Vice President of Optimum Mortgage at Canadian Western Bank. She has been recognized as a woman of influence by the Canadian Mortgage Professionals magazine for multiple years in a row. She is passionate about fostering a culture of inclusion, empowerment, and learning for her team of 120 people nationwide. Regine leads by example and balances work and life while inspiring other people around her to do the same. Welcome, AJ. Welcome, Regine. So AJ, Regine, hello, happy International Women's Day.
Hello. Hello.
So we're here today to talk about what leaders can do to trigger equality. And when we're talking about leaders, we're talking about people at every level of the organization. But we're really lucky to have the two of you here today who've had really long careers in leadership and also careers in spaces that haven't typically had a lot of women in them. So I'm wondering if you can share a lesson you've learned through your career when it comes to gender equity. And I'm also interested in seeing what you've seen change around equity throughout your career. And I'm going to start with you, Regine. Can you tell us a little bit about what your career has been like and those changes that you've seen around equity?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me today, Paulette and Ratna. I've got chills. That was fantastic. I guess if I look back at my career, there's certainly more than one instance where, as a female leader within my organization, and certainly within my industry, where I've stood out based on my gender. It was 2017 when I accepted the role that I'm in today as vice president. And I remember going into meetings with my peers at the time here at CWB, and I was the only female leading one of our revenue generating businesses at the time. So the only female in the room. And the lesson that I get to share with everyone today stems from a really positive experience. And I do recognize that is not everyone's experience. And it is one I'm very grateful for. Even though I stood out, I never felt left out. And so that lesson is, I always felt included, because even though I was underrepresented, because of the core values at my organization, and in this case, that being around inclusion and diversity and the power that those hold. I believe that any progress that you want to see needs to truly start with those core values. It needs to be a part of your DNA, and you have to live those values every single day. And then, like anything, if you want to see progress, you've got to put in the work. You can't just have great intentions. You have to be intentional. You have to have a plan, and you need to embed that plan into your practices and programs and objectives across your organization. I've gotten to work for an organization that has done this and been just completely committed and dedicated to do it at so many levels. And I'm really proud in the progress I've seen as a female leader, so that when I walk into rooms now with my peers, the representation I see has tremendous improvement. And I can also say that across the mortgage industry, it's not as progressive as I've seen within my own organization, but it is getting there. And so I think that's where I can see the difference of truly having a plan, being intentional, and working that plan.
That's great, Regine. And such a good reminder about fit and about finding the place that's going to really help you in your career and help with inclusion, but an also really strong reminder that the more that an organization can do that, the better the type of candidate they're going to attract and be able to retain. So thank you for sharing that, Regine. AJ, I'm wondering about you. What have you seen through your career? What has changed? What stayed the same? What sorts of things are you learning about?
Yeah, I think I will second what Regine said. We had a similar experience wherein you feel like you are the only person in the room. I worked in technology. I started in 1997, so it's been 25 years. And the landscape is very different. It's a very male-dominated career industry. And as she mentioned in my introduction, Suzanne, how much more if I double-click as a transgender woman. So the challenge has always been representation. And I think it was Paulette that mentioned that, we are representation of someone when especially on leadership roles. And I'd say because of the limited representation, I didn't have a role model. And there's not a lot of also women that was starting as software programmers like me. So the experience, I would say, not as a company, but as an industry is, I'd say, positive and negative. Inconsistent is probably the better word to say that. Inconsistent in terms of the recognition of your work, inconsistent in terms of the assignments and the jobs that you're receiving. And so the first lesson that I learned from that environment is, in technology, it is important to actually get your skills up to date. Get as many certifications as you can. I always tell people that start in the technology space is you actually end up studying more than when you were in university, because it's the nature of the industry. It changes a lot, and you have to go with the flow, I would say. So that was the first, and I always tell people, even in the company, focus on your work. Let your work speak for itself, because quality output is genderless. So that was the learning in that part. Now, as the industry matured and as the company matured, because the experience is inconsistent, what we're doing as a firm is we are actually, Regine mentioned the word intentional about, and Ratana is I was floored by how she's pushing for parity, because that's what we're actually doing in the firm. We have broadcasted as a public company that we're going to reach 50-50 gender parity by 2025. So that's actually a company goal of ours. Our CEO is Julie Sweet, she's female. And so that gender parity goal just trickles down to all of our offices where we operate. So 2025 is near. We're working towards that. And I think my message is first, get the goal straight, making sure that you're intentional about it, but work towards getting there, which is what we're doing as a company.
That's amazing, AJ. And I've been thinking a lot about that word intentional today. I think that's been brought up by almost all of our speakers. And I think that's such a great theme for this International Women's Day. You talked about inconsistencies, you talked about and how unsettling that can be as you're trying to move through your career. And it really does take intentionality from an organization and these really clear communicated goals to be able to move pieces forward. I think that's really great. And I think those goal settings are part of a bit of a trend that we've been seeing over the last 5-10 years of really clear goal setting. And I want to talk about another trend that has been bubbling up all over the place, and that's remote work. So some women and gender diverse workers have told us that remote work can help them manage, especially when they sometimes have overwhelming child and elder care responsibilities. That's something that pushed a lot of folks out of the workplace, but that idea of remote work is helping some of them balance that. But we've also heard from other folks that this is actually worrying for them, that remote work may actually intensify their invisibility. It might hurt their advancement. And then we hear from other people that remote work isn't even an option for them. So I'm wondering for both of you, what you see is happening in your sector when it comes to remote work, and what measures you need to think about as a company that's bringing in remote work to make sure that it bolsters equity gains and doesn't really regress equity gains in the workplace. I'm wondering, AJ, if I could start with you on that one.
Yes. I think, the pandemic has really pushed the boundaries of what the future of work is going to be. And so the first thing we realize as a company is remote work is going to be there. It's not going to be, it's not going to stop. So what we realize is the future is going to be a hybrid model. And because we realize that, as we mentioned, Suzanne, some people do have advantages for taking on remote working. I personally myself see that as an advantage in terms of, my scheduling around my personal life and balancing my work life. So what we did as a firm is we actually revisited our benefits. And one of the things that we've changed immediately in 2022 is remote working takes its toll on mental health. And so we work with our healthcare provider to increase and really focus on mental health benefits. It's actually about 10,000 per employee. And that's, and our employees can use that to talk to a counselor or, have some sessions with psychology or some care that they need while the remote work is taking its toll, because sometimes, as mothers and carers, it does take its toll. And we also provided extended benefits for our employees to choose the carer of their choice. And this is for parents, or that they can choose a carer where they could reimburse $100 a day, maximum of 30 days. So we had to adapt our benefits because we know that remote working is going to be part of our working culture. What I also want to look at is not to swing the pendulum way too far. You're right about, maybe some people think there's a disadvantage. And what I've noticed personally is we have this saying, out of sight, out of mind. So when I say the future, I think is a hybrid model, is finding that balance to take advantage of what remote work can actually benefit a person, but also balancing it with the benefits of being physically present with your coworkers. So what we did is is gave our employees a guideline as to what works best in a remote work and what works best in a personal setting. So examples would be team building is better in, face to face and really having that physical presence, doing a joint solutioning or a brainstorming activity. Those, we encourage people to go work in person. And especially in our company where we hire new hires and fresh graduates, we've seen that they feel like they're left behind and they don't know the firm, they don't know the company. So we encourage our leaders to come into the office, and we actually broadcast, like me as a leader, when I'm in the office, so that there's a one-on-one time with employees that are also in our physical work. So to end all of this, I think the future is a hybrid model. Companies should look at how to change benefits to accommodate that change, that future. But you as an employee, you should be responsible to find a balance, strike a balance between what's remote benefits you for remote working and what is needed when you have to go physical work environment.
Thank you, AJ. I like that idea that there's no one size fits all model, and that it does require some delicate balancing here. Regina, I'm wondering if you could speak about remote work, because I know that that's an option that's available for some in your organization, but maybe not for others.
Yeah, AJ, it was great hearing about what you're doing at Accenture, because this is still something that we're learning. And I think an important part of that is learning and listening to our employees. And so you're right, Suzanne, remote work isn't going to, as AJ said, isn't always the best solution for certain activities and tasks and connections. But it's also not the best option for certain roles that need to be meeting face-to-face with clients, as we do quite often at CWB and as in providing service to our clients. So when I think of remote work versus in person, I think what's important and what we've heard from our employee base in our conversations is around the word flexibility. And flexibility can take many forms. It isn't just about where you work, it's also in how you perform your work. And as I mentioned, like this is something we're always learning and always trying to adapt and making sure that we can provide workplace practices that ensure that people feel like they have choices around those flexible work options that best support their individual needs. I think one of the learnings that I think is really important that we need to carry forward, that we learned during the pandemic when all of us were forced to be remote, is that the pandemic kind of leveled the playing field in terms of caregivers, whether that be childcare or elder care. Personally, my maternity leave for my son almost ran right into the pandemic. So I was returning to the workplace as a new mom, right as the pandemic began, and we were forced to work from home. So I had all these fears around, how to that inclusion I discussed earlier, of always feeling included, and but like, would I still feel that way now that I might not be able to participate at certain dinners or certain networking events the same way I was, because I now held these responsibilities? And those fears of mine went away immediately, because everyone showed up in the same way. It was accessible for everybody to participate and be involved in the decisions and the discussions and the idea generation because we were all in the same meetings. Now, it didn't come without its challenges, having, like a 1-year-old and managing that with work from home, recognizing those challenges that caregivers still held during the pandemic and still hold today. But that lesson that I think at an organizational level that we need to take away is we need to ensure that as we come back to a hybrid model, flexibility in what makes sense to do in person and what makes sense to allow flexibility in working remotely, is that we make sure that the decisions, the discussions, and the perspectives can be that those who are caregivers, that it's planned so they can participate fully as well. So it might mean if there are times when it is about, moving off site, as, corporate retreats or corporate events might happen, you give plenty of notice for your team members so that they can be very planned in those responsibilities that they have at home. Or it's about making sure that agendas and meetings and decisions happen during the day so that people can still be there for those responsibilities at home as they need to be. And I think that's really important that we continue to do and not just sort of fall on those old habits that might have been there for organizations previous to the pandemic.
Very smart. And I think that theme of not falling back to old habits has also been coming up a little bit today. And making those choices that create new workplaces, that create new ways of being, that takes leadership, and that takes leadership at all levels. So I'm wondering if you could each talk about what someone can do at any level of an organization to enhance equity and inclusion in their own workplaces. Maybe Regine, let's start with you on that.
I'm going to go back to what I'd said earlier. And as you recognized, it might be a theme from today. It's being intentional, right? Having a plan and being accountable to it. I like to believe the best in people and that we all do come with the best intentions. But I think you need to also think about, okay, what does this mean for my hiring practices? What does this mean for the development practices? What does it mean for building in opportunities for community and mentorship and sponsorship for individuals, so that we can continue, so that everything that we're doing for growing and creating more gender diversity and is with intention.
That's great, Regine. What about you, AJ? What can people do at different levels of an organization to really enhance equity and inclusion?
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind, especially for leaders in organization, is walk the talk. As you mentioned, Suzanne, it's now normal in all organizations to actually proclaim and say we have a gender parity goal, right? Let's not end it as just mere words, but really create intentional, deliberate actions to get to that goal. So what are the things that you can do as a leader to walk the talk? Start with a simple one. Be a sponsor, or be an advocate for your ERG. If there is no ERG, employee resource group, that doesn't exist, then be the leader that actually says, let's create an employee resource group. That for me as a leader is the first step. Second is simple. Talk to women, right? Have a conversation with your women employees and really have that space for them to express their feelings, and you get to know what really the women needs in your organization. And then thirdly, if there will be initiatives that will be executed in the organization, be the most visible person that supports that initiative. If it's a panel discussion, even if it's a simple fundraising activity, be there and be visible. So that's for the leaders in the firm. For any level in the organization, and I think maybe this is going back to Ratana, because I've learned in this very session where her leadership style is about compassion, kindness, and understanding. I think that should be embodied by every single person in a company, not just for women, right? The emotional offering of that can also be done by men and not just women. So we can all be compassionate. We can all exhibit all these feminine qualities that resides in all of us. And that could be done by any employee in a company.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you, Regine. I hope you both have a wonderful rest of your International Women's Day. I want to say thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and sharing your perspective. I think this is a really interesting conversation with two folks who've really come a long way in spaces that were often not always open for women. So I want to say thank you for role modeling, for trailblazing, for being visible, for being intentional, for really demonstrating all of those things that we're talking about today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're reaching the end of our program, and I want to say thank you to our insightful speakers. And I really want to say thank you to every single person who's choosing to spend their International Women's Day with us today. At the Canadian Women's Foundation, we work with companies of all sizes to advance important diversity and inclusion work in their organizations and in their communities. And we'd love to hear from you if you have any questions, if you'd like to explore a partnership, or if you're interested in volunteer opportunities for your corporate team. We can be reached through email at partnerships@canadianwomen.org. You can also go to our website, canadianwomen.org, to see all the different ways that you can get involved as an individual or as a company. You're also going to hear from us in the coming weeks as we send out surveys, as we send out more information. So there'll be lots of opportunities to connect. Today, also, I would be remiss to not point out that today is a great day to think about making a gift in honor of a woman or gender diverse person in your life who has really helped you get to where you are today. If you are in the position to make a donation in tribute to someone in your life, please visit canadianwomen.org, where you can choose from a variety of e-cards that can be sent immediately to the recipient to let them know you're thinking of them this International Women's Day. In the next day or so, you're going to be getting a survey from us about the event, and we really want you to tell us how we did. Your voice really matters here. We're a learning organization, and we use your feedback to set the agenda for next year's International Women's Day event. In that survey, you're also going to get a recording of this event, and you can share that with folks in your network. Here at the Canadian Women's Foundation, we are a national leader in the movement for gender equality in Canada. Through funding, through research, advocacy, and knowledge sharing, the Canadian Women's Foundation works to achieve systemic change. And we can only achieve that change if we all work together from coast to coast to coast to raise our voice and push for equity and inclusion. Together, when we raise our voices, we can enable the potential of so many people who have been left behind and left out of critical conversations. As Paulette said earlier, one of our founding mothers, Rosemary Brown, has this famous quote, and she said, "Until all of us have made it, none of us have made it." Let's keep that spirit with us this International Women's Day. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your International Women's Day.